everybody. This episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Bean. I'm the founder and CEO of Street Cop Training. I don't know if I say it the same way every single time, but I'm trying to. Who knows what episode this is? I don't know. I really got to start counting. Maybe I'll have somebody look into how many episodes we have. 60, 70, something like that around there. And I'm here today back again with Miss Jenna Romano. Jenna Rose coaching, the clinician, therapist, psychotherapist, psychopathic lunatic that she is. And we are here. We're going to pick up our last conversation or last podcast episode we did about mental health and awareness. We left off with talking about burnout. And today, Jen, what are we going into today?
Let's talk about stress.
All right, cool. We are not in person. We're doing it via Zoom because I don't want to hold back. Our schedules conflict a tad, but I want to make sure we continue to roll this stuff out. We're having a lot of great feedback from folks who are finding extreme value in this conversation. And it brings me great pleasure to know that we're being able to go out there and help people. Jen, I did a podcast yesterday with that guy, Matt Zalewski, who was shot in the line of duty. You got to listen to that one. It's friggin' wild. I was actually getting emotional during the thing, you could hear it in my voice. And he actually became a counselor for people who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and high anxiety and all that stuff, like, critical incident. And that's what he became. He's now a part-time reserve officer, but he also, that's his full-time job now. So that's what he got out of it after being shot 5 times on a traffic stop. Wild story too, like really, really wild stuff. So anyway, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so we're going to talk about stress today. Before we go into all that, because we go off on tangents and we have been really good about keeping notes and coming back to it. But I have been getting a lot of inquiries about therapy, about self-help books. So I just want to take just the first couple minutes to talk about some of my staple books that I've been giving out and a spiel about therapy for people who are contemplating seeking professional help. Okay. So first thing that I want to say is that if you're looking into getting into, if you're exploring therapy for the first time or the second time, here's my disclaimer to you. I give this resource out to everybody. Psychologytoday.com. It has a list of verified, meaning that they have active licenses, therapists, and it's really a marketing tool for us as therapists to put ourselves out there. It gets all the Google hits and stuff like that. But if you go to Psychology Today, you can search for a therapist based upon your location, your need, and your insurance type. So that is a very, very awesome, valuable resource because we are trying to look into more resources. Like I said, it's limited because it's state specific. As a clinician, I can only practice in the states that I'm licensed. So we can find an awesome therapist that works with law enforcement and first responders in California. But if you're not in California, you're kind of shit out of luck. So
what about asking if you're in California, maybe reaching out to Nick Wilson, who
Absolutely.
may have some resources in California. So from the Resiliency Project, he's also a street cop instructor.
Mm-hmm.
And before you on, your insurance, I think you could also, guys, if you found a therapist that you like, I think you can call your insurance company and ask if it's out of network, how much is covered, and see if you're willing to pay that. I just wanted to interject.
Absolutely. That. So if you wanted to explore somebody who's out of network, don't let your insurance be a deterrent. Your health is very, very important. So if you find somebody that's out of network, yes, definitely call your insurance and ask them these questions. Ask them if you have an out of network deductible, which means that you have to pay a certain amount of money before they cover anything. And ask them what the out of network co-insurance is. So once you meet that deductible, what percentage of the visit does the insurance cover? So those are some good questions to ask too. So what I say to everybody is when you're looking for a therapist, treat this like an interview for them. So call 5 different people. Ask for, everyone should do a brief consultation where you can talk to them, get vibes for them, see if you like them. That's also what I like about Psychology Today. You'll see people's pictures, you'll read their bios. So it's not just this cold call, if you will, that's happening. So definitely check out that resource. But like I said, treat this like an interview. Interview 5 people. And if you don't find the best candidate, keep looking. don't settle for anything less than awesome for a therapist, because you're going to be going hypothetically, emotionally, places that you haven't gone before. So you need the right person to do that. Likewise, if you have a bad experience, we all have different personalities. We all have different experiences, modalities that we use. We are not one size fits all. So if you have a bad experience, do not let that deter you from looking for somebody else who could help you a little bit better. Keep looking, keep interviewing. Like I said, treat it like a job. You still have that position to fill for the interview process, right? So continue to look until you find something that's a good fit for you. And if it's not a good fit for you, have that discussion and just say to them, you know what, this isn't really working for me. Can you help me find somebody that can help me work more towards XYZ, whatever it is that you're not being fulfilled with in that relationship. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there, because a lot of people are asking me, and I do want them to know about therapy in general, the resources that are available to them in general. And like I said, make sure that these people are first responder specific, because if they don't have that first responder cultural competence, like we would like to call it, they could potentially do more harm than good, and potentially not help you to the fullest extent that they can. So ask them, have you ever worked with anybody who's a police officer before? Why not? See what they say.
Just want to just throw this in here as well. Yesterday in the podcast episode that we did, which should be, I guess, in chronological order, the one prior to this, Matt Zalewski, and I'm saying his last name wrong because I know it's Zalewski, but it's spelled Zalewski. He said that he has resources in Texas. I think that's what you referred to. So oddly enough, he's a Texas guy. So if you want to reach out to him, his email address was given prior. And Jenna, I just want to let you know that I believe he's going to be joining our team as another active resource for mental health for us.
Perfect.
So now we have 4 of us. Well, I mean, I'm just kind of the guy who's almost like the like that guy here. And you guys are the ones that are the resources. I'm just trying to piece everybody together to try to resolve some of the issues regarding mental health and law enforcement and just in life. I've realized that there are a lot more people who are mentally not well who can hide it very well. And it's very hard to see. A lot of people say sometimes when somebody does take their own life, well, he seemed like he was fine. Were there signs? Were you looking for them? Are you thinking about that? And we're not hyper focused on everybody that's not a loved one of ours. A coworker could be somebody that you love, but it's not somebody you're going to focus on. Is that guy all right? I don't know if there's common consistencies in people who are displaying characteristics of suicide, but you hear it all the time. Oh, this guy, it seemed like he was fine. He was just laughing and joking the other day. So, we're really trying to implore people that really is not an option. I don't even want to say it's your last option. It's not an option, and it should never be an option. And you'll be thankful when you've made the decision not to do something like that later on. Did you ever see that thing where they interviewed everybody or they interviewed the guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge? I think about this, the one who did it and lived. You ever see that one? The guy's got he was adopted. He is schizophrenic. He's a mess. And they said, what was the first thought when you jumped off the bridge? And he said, regretting jumping off the bridge. It was a mistake. So, and I think they've interviewed other people who said the same thing. It was after they jumped, they wish they didn't jump. He lived, but that was the overall theme. So for some odd reason, you've already taken that leap. There's no turning back, and only a handful of people are spared, especially with, with the idea that they're probably pretty injured too.
Yeah.
And I believe they say a lot of times when people jump off those bridges, just on a weird scientific thing, it's not the fall that kills them on impact into the water. It's them getting stuck in the mud down there and drowning. Or breaking limbs and then you drown. It's not like an impact that kills you. It actually, so that's where he realized, he says, when I jumped, I immediately regretted it. Oof. So just, some food for thought. Might guide some people with that, for that. Maybe somebody's listening to this. And again, we're not saying it's a far majority of folks, but I just wanted to pass that along. Who am I, right?
Who are you? Yeah. Tell them who you are, Dennis.
My name's Dennis Benino. That's all I've really got.
Wait, let me give you guys some books too, because a lot of people have been asking about books. Bulletproof Spirit. Look, I brought them. Isn't that nice of me?
Yeah, that's good that you're showing it in the camera. Then most people are going to be taking this in on a, on an audio version. So explain the title there.
No, I'm going to, but I was just
All right,
hoping that maybe Greg would make a little clip. Greg?
Greg's not here, Jen. And you're going to have to text Greg Lopez directly and say, Greg, can you make a video clip of this?
I will.
Okay.
Okay. So Bulletproof Spirit is one of them. Full disclosure, I have yet to read this one, but I did buy it because I can't even tell you how many people have read this and said, you got to get this book. You got to get this book. Everybody's telling me. Okay. So Bulletproof Spirit by Captain Dan Willis. There are some books by Scott Medlin. I do not have them on me yet. He's written 2 specific for law enforcement. So he's another amazing resource too. Right here. Here's another one. The Body Keeps Score. Now, if you want to talk trauma, if we're not talking specific to law enforcement, we just want to learn more about trauma. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk is amazing. I haven't read this whole book because I took his 2-day continuing education training course for clinicians, which was essentially like this and some more. But this is awesome. This is an awesome book if you want to learn about how trauma affects the brain, how trauma affects the body, the neurology of trauma, that kind of thing. And so is this one, Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. So these are like 2 of the top medically driven professionals that have really paved the way in terms of trauma. And then I have another one that was given to me by my supervisee. Actually, she found this and she loved it. Rewire Your Anxious Brain by Catherine Pittman and Elizabeth Carl. So this is a really good one because she says that it goes into, and again, I have to read this one too. I have like a list of things that I need to read, but that one's really good because it goes into, again, like I'm like a brain neuroscience type of person, and it goes into different types of anxiety, where they're stored in the brain, and gives you practical steps on how to work with your anxious brain and rewire your anxious brain to kind of desensitize you to some of those triggers. So I just wanted to share those because that was something that I have been sharing with, I've had like multiple people reaching out to me and talking with me. You know, my big thing is self-help or seek help. So if I'm self-helping, I'm giving them these types of resources. If we're seeking help, we're talking about the Psychology Today resource. We're talking about like just basic what to expect in therapy. Like some people need to just kind of talk to me about that and really kind of feel what a mock session would feel like. And it actually really helps them. Like, they're like, okay, I'm ready to take the next step now. And that's really powerful.
That's awesome. I'm going to back up just a little bit and I have a question for you. Who in 2021 still has a landline in their house? That's the question.
Well, Dennis,
I'm just curious, like, why do you still have a landline?
You need a landline in your house.
For what?
I like talking on landline phones.
Why?
They don't have cords. Give me a little bit of credit here.
Excuse me. Neither does your cell phone. Matter of fact, you could even put earbuds in and walk around, wireless earbuds, Bluetooth.
I don't need to do that, Dennis. I'm old school.
All right, let's move on here. We got things to do.
I'm old school.
All right, so let's go into where are we starting first? We're going into stress?
Let's talk about stress, yes. Because we talked about burnout and we were saying the difference between stress and burnout. So burnout is kind of, like I said, like the accumulation of all that stress, different layers of stress. But let's talk about stress. Where do you want to start?
You tell me. You're the therapist.
Okay. I can do that.
How about this? How about recognizing stress? Here's something interesting. I was explaining to somebody in the office recently about meditation. And I said, I'm sorry, it wasn't a meditation. I was talking to my barber about it. So, hey, Andrew, if you're listening to our podcast, which you're probably not, there's a conversation we had. So he asked me, he was interested about the meditation process. What'd you say?
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, no, for making me look handsome. Appreciate it, Drew. About the meditation process. And I try to explain to people, like, you know, everybody comes up with the same excuse about meditation. I can't focus my brain. You're not supposed to, right? And I spoke about that in the previous podcast. But what I said to him was, when you understand the relaxation techniques, a lot of it in the beginning is learning how tense your body is and a lot of the stress that you're under. So really getting good at meditation is really understanding to feel your body and know that there is nothing locked up and tense. But I'm telling you, you'd be surprised how tense you are and stressed throughout the day on some of the things life is just throwing you as a normal course of conduct. Meditation will reduce that stress dramatically, but it's like anything else. You can't go to the gym tomorrow and think you can have a six-pack by the end of the week. It's not going to work that way. I tell people I really started feeling the effects of meditation about 15 months in. So it's twice a day, 22 minutes a day. And I haven't been fully, there have been times where I've missed 3-4 days at a clip. I always pretty much get one in the morning. There's a lot of times I miss the second day. So especially for the work that I do. I'm out, I meditate in the morning. I get up, I teach a class for 10 and a half hours. I get back to my hotel, sometimes 7:30, or I've got to catch a flight at 9:30. So I'll try to meditate in those moments when I can. And it doesn't have to be quiet. You don't have to be in a dome. You can actually, the kind of meditation that I do, and I'll give again, because she gives free training and free meditation lessons to law enforcement. Emily Fletcher from Ziva Meditation, Ziva, is a great resource. And if you reach out to her, I believe she'll give you access to her online program at no cost. And I'll continue to promote her because she gives free training. And she's somebody who's she's quite a lib, but she appreciates law enforcement. So I believe law enforcement and military, because of the trauma that she understands, can attend any of her training seminars for free, which is phenomenal.
I love that.
Yeah, I love her. She's great. She wrote a book. How I got turned on to her was I heard her speaking as a guest on a podcast, got very interested in the conversation. The podcast was Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. And then I bought her book, audiobook, of course. I don't read. I read case law in words, but I tend to listen to things. I'm a very audio learner. And then I just said, yeah, we're going to go to her class. We're going to go to her seminar. And me and Jay went for a 4-day seminar in Manhattan.
4 days. Wow.
Yeah. 4 days, like 4 to 5 hours a clip. And of course we went during like the coldest spell in the history of the United States. And, it was really, really good. There were some weird people there, but naturally I think at a meditation seminar, you're probably going to find some strange people. And it's interesting for me as I kind of relate to her, like, what do you suspect that I'll get out of this, me personally? And she really gave me some good advice. And I'll be honest with you, I have to chalk up some of my comfortability to flying to my meditation. I mean, I used to be highly anxious of flying on a plane. And now I generally tend to meditate as soon as I get on the plane and through takeoff. I got to tell you, I mean, nothing bothers me on the plane anymore. Nothing. It just does not.
That's great.
And I'll that's just some advice to everybody. And don't think it's too hippie-ish to go meditate. It's a real important thing. I mean,
very manly.
Oh, listen, meditation is great. I mean, you want to talk about there's physical, benefits to it. They talk about the corpus callosum. Is that the thing that separates the two hemispheres of the brain? That it's like 25, 30 times more thicker in people who are meditators.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. The research that backs meditation says that, I mean, it's like an 80% increase in attention and mood improvement. But the key thing is that it has to be done just like any other exercise. It has to be done regularly, or else the benefits don't last. Muscle memory. Your brain is a muscle.
The reason I got into meditation, there's a book called Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, and he interviews 350 of the world's most successful people. And 70% were meditators and 30% were manifestors. So what it means by manifesting is they were journaling in the morning, and they were journaling what they thought their future would look like and who they were going to be. And it could be something as small as I'm not going to be angry anymore and things like that. And then Ray Dalio, who runs the largest hedge fund, or ran the largest hedge fund in the United States, who is worth probably in somewhere ballpark of $16 billion. Every interview he does, when they go to pick his brain at the end, said, Ray, one piece of advice for everybody. What could you do? Just one piece of advice. Because now Ray Dalio, who was a closed introvert, is now an open book because he's trying to give back in his third series of his life. His last 30 years, he calls it. And he says, meditate. That's the best gift I can give anybody. So you've got the most successful people in the world who are meditators. And so the writing's on the wall. I'm just a believer on what they have to say. That's who I'm listening to.
Mhm.
That's what I
So
have.
I think that when people hear the word meditation, they associate that with like the right?
Yeah. Right. You're going to be on a carpet floating.
Yeah, right. But like, tell us then you tell us, 'cause like I'm not a meditation type of person. Honestly, I'm really not. What you're describing what before was when you were saying noticing how your muscles are tense and how they loosen. We would call that progressive muscle relaxation. You guys can Google different progressive muscle relaxation exercises. There's under relaxation calming exercises, we call them passive relaxation. One of those is called progressive muscle relaxation, which is what you're describing right there. It's like it can be from head to toe, like scrunching your eyes and then
Mm-hmm.
releasing, and then noticing the difference between when your face was scrunched and when your face is released. And then, you move down to like your jawline, your shoulders. I mean, your ears, things that people don't really realize that they're tensing up. A big one for all of us is your shoulders. Like if I told everybody here, every single person, scrunch your shoulders really, really hard and hold it for 5 seconds and hold it really, 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 really hard and then release. You're like, oh, that's what it feels like to be calm and like serene for the moment,
Mm-hmm.
like in my shoulders. Because a lot of us hold tension right here. Like we walk around like this every single day. I know some people can't see me, but I'm just kind of like walking around with like no neck, like with my shoulders like all tensed up. And then the moment that someone comes back, like grabs you behind the neck, you're like, oh, damn, I didn't realize how sore I was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you're describing progressive muscle relaxation. Meditation. You tell me, like, how do you meditate? Do you do like a guided imagery? Like, is that okay? So that's another
I
type
mean,
of.
listen, you can go on YouTube and Google Ziva, Ziva meditation. She'll walk you through some techniques.
Mhm,
The full course, if you do it online, they're gonna set you up with a 15-minute a day meditation.
mhm,
I don't know if it's still the same way, but in person, she will teach you the 22-minute. She'll actually give you a mantra. So essentially, in a nutshell, this is kind of how it works. She calls it the lazy man's meditation. She's also the meditation coach for big Hollywood A-listers. She does NFL sports teams. So like all these people who are high achievers are meditators. I mean, literally, I believe she had a contract with the Giants. She really is she's super cool too. She's like a super cool lady. She's like hip. She's cool as shit. She's like, my age. But essentially, you don't have to try to control. Everybody says the same thing. I talk about meditation. I can't. I have 1,000 things in my mind. Well, that's right. You're supposed to allow that to occur. So essentially, what happens is you're going to understand your five senses, feeling
yep,
the greatest feeling and the most. So, for example, the smallest feeling. You're going to close your eyes. You generally want to if you can, find a darker place. So I'll shut the lights off just because of the cells in your eyes and all that stuff. It just brings you to a more meta state. That's why you should sleep in the dark and very, very dark.
mhm.
And you then just try to begin to understand what's going on in your body. What's the thing you feel the most? You could actually practice these exercises in her book as well. Book's $15 for an audio version. And then
Nice.
the lightest thing you feel. What do you hear? What's the loudest thing you hear? What's the softest thing you hear? What do
Mhm,
you smell? What do you taste? And then what do you see in the darkness with your eyes closed? And then you're going to introduce your mantra. So the idea is as your mind drifts off, you're bringing it back down to almost like to gravity to earth and let it drift off again. And then if something comes back, so you're also purging a lot of your bad past, and that starts to erupt and you'll go through a lot of things. It actually cleanses all those things. So a lot of critical incidents start to get cleanses. I mean, I go back to things sometimes that I didn't even know existed from my childhood. I'm like, oh shit, I haven't thought about that. And since that occurred when I was 9, you know what I mean? When I fell off a bridge into a river and I thought I was going to die, something like that. I don't know. I'm just saying in general. So that stuff continues to come out. And, she explains a lot of things that you're going to drift off and come back. And this is a very nutshell version. Don't try to
No,
do it off
no,
of one
I
experience.
think that it's great to hear because people, like I said, people have this idea. They don't know what the
Yeah.
hell it is though.
No,
But if they hear it coming from you, somebody that they respect, they may actually be open to it. That's
I
why
sit
I'm
in the
asking
airport and
what the
meditate.
experience is like for you.
Yeah, like literally I sit in the airport and meditate. But what you'll notice is when you're trying to relax, you try to continue to just check your body to see where you're at. In the beginning, I mean, literally, I'd be like, oh man, my teeth are grinding. Like
Yes.
I'm tense. You feel like especially your legs. You want to try to get into, and by the way, this is not a position where you don't want to be sitting down. You want to be sitting up and almost leaning forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes closed. You're almost going to look like your head's lowering down and you're dipping like you're sleeping. Sometimes I get nervous when I got to do it like in public in my truck. It looks like I'm on the nod or overdosing on heroin. In today's date, I want somebody calling. So I know other meditators and people have knocked on their doors and been like, yo, are you all right? So I try to face my truck towards like a tree line where nobody can see me. And I have tinted windows so you can't see into the car. But it is making time for it is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You know, Jay started with me. She stopped meditating. She got COVID in October last year and she stopped meditating. And I'm supposed to be her accountability coach for meditating. That's what we are together. And I've been like punching her in the fucking face every day. I'm like, are you meditating?
That's
And
really zen.
yeah, people think that, well, people think that you can just stop. And there may be periods that you do stop, just like the gym. Like 2 days ago, I had a switch where Den is coming out of summer mode. You know, summer mode when you start eating everything because in New Jersey, you've got 4 months to pack in all this goddamn fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes like going home and not working out a second time, going to the boardwalk, getting ice cream, eating burgers and fries with my kids, because that's what families do, and having stupid shit. And the other day, I'm like, I'm done with sweets. And I haven't had one since. So the sugar thing is out. I'm serious. And I'm done. Now, the problem is I know that.
How are you with your other junk food, Dennis? Because last time I was there, you had Doritos on your desk.
I said I've stopped sweets. And by the way, the Doritos are still here. Hold on a second. I might have moved. I didn't eat them. They're still here.
So you're giving yourself credit for not eating the junk food that's surrounding you?
Yeah.
That's great discipline.
But but I actually, so bad habits at night, I was snacking before I was going to bed, knowing it was yeah. So I stopped that. It's funny when I stopped. So I'll stop that. And I'm really going to try to stick with it as long as I can. But sometimes it just restarts, especially right around the holidays. It's after Thanksgiving, the night of, and then we have leftover this. And I'm like, man, I'm a sucker for apple pie. You know what I mean? So
I agree. I
there's
always
a discipline.
like absolutely. And I always say, like, my big thing is watch your habits, not your weight. So don't pay attention to the scale, pay attention to the habits that are contributing to your negative thought process. Like, I just eat like shit. That's more important than like,
well, you're telling yourself a story of who you are.
Absolutely. And it contributes to how you feel about yourself.
Sure. You tell yourself a story. And I you know, again, I've packed on more weight than I'm comfortable with, and people might see me and say, you look fine. And but I know I don't feel the same. I just know I don't. And I'm going to knock off 10 to 15 pounds in the next 45 days.
God bless you.
Well, because I'm also implementing, there's another book that you might like, but it's not for everybody. It's called The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma.
Okay.
Really, really good book, but it requires deep discipline.
Okay.
And it's a hard one to follow. There's no bullshit. I mean, it's difficult. And essentially what the root of the book is waking up at 5 a.m., meditating, working out, eating correctly, meditating a second time and working out a second time. And also during that time, including 2 90-minute deep tissue massages weekly. So you're talking about, you're talking about 12 to 14 exercise routines, 45 minutes to an hour clip a day, 44 minutes of meditation, and then 290. It's a lot. It's a lot. But again, people have asked me in like the Instagram stories, like, how do I stay thin on midnights? How do I not get fat? And the answer is, the answer is I'm not going to the diner and having a stack of chocolate chip pancakes at 3 a.m. It means that you're going to have to meal. It's a matter of having the discipline and sticking to the regimen. It's hard. I'm not always good at it. It's hard. It just is.
Yeah. And readjusting your habits. We're like very habit driven as animals.
We have to be. You've got to get into a routine. And the problem with law enforcement is it's never routine.
I know. That's
the killer.
That's what disrupts the process. Because as we create new habits, the neurocircuits inside of our brain start to connect. And that's how we start to become, that's how we could do things on autopilot. essentially. So when we have habits, like our brain works very efficiently. It doesn't want to do a lot of work. So that's why it creates the neurocircuits, which in turn create habits. So when your brain has those habits and you're kind of just going through the phases without having to be very mindful and think about it, it's easier for us. But when you're, like you're saying, when your shift is constantly changing and you're constantly having to readapt, it's harder to create new habits. I mean, that takes time. Absolutely.
I've been some points where I've had 30, 40 days of very disciplined regimen routines. And then I get on the road for especially during COVID, I'm on the road for 4 or 5 days at a clip. I can't get into a gym because they're not even open. At the hotel gyms are closed. And I'm not much of a person I like machines, and I'm not going to be on the ground doing shit like that. I can't run anymore. My knee is shot. So that's out of I can't jog. We made a joke that we had to run in the we were about to miss the flight to Indianapolis, and we had no choice. And I remember getting on the plane, your adrenaline's pumping because they're like, we're 20 things down, 20 terminals down, and like last call Indianapolis, and we're like, oh my God, I was like running with 2 roller bags, and like adrenaline's through the roof. Sit on the plane, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with my? I forget that like I have some real bad knee issues, and I'm like, what the? Then I'm getting off the plane. I'm like, what is wrong with my knee? Is it that temperature? Is it humid? I've heard of these things. I'm like, oh, wait, I just ran literally as fast as I could for 20 terminals on adrenaline. So the pain, you didn't feel it until I sat down and it all started to subside. But anyway, I don't want to continue to talk.
I got you.
Let's go into other stress things.
Okay, so I wrote down notes because, like I said, we're starting to get good with taking our notes and everything. So I wrote down notes and with some of the things that you were saying. So what I liked about your meditation is what you were describing was mindfulness. I know it's like such a foo-foo word, and it's, you know why? Because self-care and mindfulness and meditation have been so friggin' commercialized that people feel like it's just such a soft, corny type of a thing. So I want you to erase that from your mind, and I want you to think of mindfulness in terms of self-growth. Because if you're not mindful and you're not aware, and what mindfulness is being present and aware in the moment, which as police officers, you guys always have to do. But you have to be so focused and aware of your surroundings and mindful from that perspective that sometimes you forget about being mindful and aware of yourself and your body. So, you're constantly observing other people. And I want you to take those skills and use those skills to observe yourself. So how you're feeling, what you're thinking in the present moment, because as you develop that mindfulness, you can grow and you can develop skills to improve your mental health, to improve your mental hygiene, if you will. So, and that mindfulness is based upon your 5 senses, being very, very aware, like you were saying just before, like, so when you were running and you were running to the terminal and the adrenaline is pumping and you're on go mode, similar to someone out in the field whose adrenaline is pumping, they're on go mode, their senses are heightened, their body is only focused on one thing, that set goal. You were focused on getting on the plane. Your body wasn't telling you that your knee hurt, because your body didn't need your knee to hurt at that point in time. Your body needed you to get on the friggin' plane. Just like other people, when they're out in the field and they're in that adrenaline, that high energy moment, and it's not until you're out of that moment where you have to become a little bit more mindful of like, ooh, my knee hurts. Damn, my stomach hurts. Oh, my shoulders are tense. I got a friggin' headache because I have so much stress in my body that like I have a tension headache. So being mindful, can help you be more aware of what your needs are. And that's as far as we need to get to be able to tell you like what the next step of things would look like for you. So I love the fact that you're talking about meditation, because the underlying message behind that is being mindful, being aware, and being with yourself, which is a really hard thing for anxious people to do because it's uncomfortable. It's like, well, what if I'm anxious? What if my mind starts going? I can't control my thoughts. I can't control how my body feels. And it's not about controlling how your body feels. It's about accepting and tolerating how your body feels and having discipline to do that. And we'll give you skills to do that.
We had when I talked to Matt Zalewski yesterday, and he described when he first got shot. He didn't even know he was shot. He was shot 5 times, so it didn't start dawning on him how he actually couldn't feel it for a while. Began to drive and start real him that he actually forgot that he was shot. Some people say, "Well, your knee is so bad you were able to run." I mean, same concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. You're on go mode.
Yep.
Okay. So then let's talk about stress. This is where it's leading us, right? So stress is what essentially your nervous system reacting to a stimulus. We have our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, and our parasympathetic nervous system, which is what puts the brake on fight or flight. Like it's like, okay, fight or flight is over. It's time to get back to normal. It's time to find homeostasis and relax. Because our brain has a couple different goals. One, like I said before, our brain is very, very efficient. So it wants to work off of habit and routine. It doesn't have to do a lot of work that way. Another is that it wants to keep you safe, because the way that your brain looks at potential threats is essentially looking at it as eat lunch, don't be lunch. That's it. So your brain looks at a potential threat and it says, I would rather perceive you to be a threat and deal with the byproduct of that, which is anxiety and stress, than not perceive that to be a threat and deal with the consequence of that, which is death. Because again, so your brain cares about safety. It cares about reproduction, because we're animals and you can't reproduce if you're dead. So we're constantly looking at, we're constantly evaluating, like, is something safe, is something not safe? And that happens a lot in this profession too. What happens is that your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight, starts to become a little screwy, if you will, because it's constantly being triggered. It's constantly being turned on. So maybe now it's perceiving threats that aren't really threats. Perhaps it's turning on when it shouldn't be turning on. Or maybe when it's turning on, we're having a real inability to turn it off afterwards. Because I think it takes I want to say 2 hours to have your body return to homeostasis after it's been triggered. And I don't want to say critical incident, because it could be anything that's triggering this system. It really depends on your genes. It depends on your life experiences. It depends on a lot of different things.
How do we able to discern between a critical incident and a regular incident?
That's it. Because what could be a critical incident to one person is not a critical incident to another person. Mm-hmm. And so in some of my trainings, I put examples of that. I had one ER nurse who, when I asked people, I said, what is you define a critical incident to me, right? Because it's so subjective. It's not objective. I mean, we can objectively say that a critical incident could be defined as something that was life-threatening. We could objectively say that, but not all critical incidents have to be life-threatening. We just need to perceive them to be. And that's up to the person who's experiencing it. So
I had dinner with a friend of mine recently, and he said, what I learned was being okay is okay. Everybody else is judging that during this I should not be okay, but I am okay. So that was an interesting thing that I heard from him, that being okay is okay. He learned that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of that is being desensitized. So some of our brains will say to us, I mean, just like anxiety, the way that some of us, some clinicians treat anxiety through different exposure therapy. And that could be visual, or that could be in person. That could be, somebody's afraid of spiders. I don't know who I would be referring to, but somebody could be afraid of spiders, and you could start an exposure task would be visualizing spiders. You want to start with like the least anxiety producing. Then you kind of want to desensitize yourself to that. The more you think of spiders, the less scary your brain starts to feel it is to react to it. Then maybe look at a picture of spiders. Then maybe watch a video of spiders. then maybe start to see spiders from 15 feet away, maybe 5 feet away. So it's like it's gradual exposure based upon keeping your anxiety in a controllable state where you can implement certain coping skills to decrease your anxiety.
What would you think? What would you when we spoke originally in the early times of our friendship, 5 weeks ago when we started becoming friends, I had just forced myself on planes, and it was torturous for me to be getting on planes and flying, but I didn't let my amygdala, my fight or flight brain, my lizard brain dictate what my sense was. So I would say to myself, like, if you're going to be this person, you're going to get your ass on this plane. And I flew so much that I started to become more comfortable with it. And I did my own research. So what is that besides, like, maybe similar to somebody quitting smoking cold turkey?
Mhm.
What would you consider that to be, just to just kind of toss yourself into and be like, fuck it, I'll figure it out?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's like extreme exposure. It's
Yeah.
like I'm just going in and I'm just going to deal with my panic and work with my panic, because then if you experience the worst case scenario, you're cognitively, it's like, okay, we're building up the number one, the feeling of discomfort in our minds. If I go on a plane, I'm going to be really uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with that. So number one is disputing that you can be really uncomfortable and still be okay. You're capable of tolerating your discomfort. And number two is, in the worst case scenario, if I get on this plane and my end all fear is that, I don't know, what was your end all fear?
That it's going to crash.
That's going to crash and you're going to
Mhm.
die. And some of the ways that you can combat that is, like I think you were saying too, looking up statistics, seeing how statistically probable that could be for you. For some people, that's not enough for them, but for you, maybe that's enough. I
I'm
go,
also looking at, like, I'm like, all right, so the flight attendants jump on these things all day long. These pilots are flying these things for 30 years. This is their career. They're getting on no problem. And I just did a lot of research. It really gave me a lot of comfort knowing what the different sounds are. Being through some, me and Jay got on a plane from Pensacola to Atlanta for a connecting flight back to Newark. And, I never forget that morning. I kind of checked the weather as I usually do, because we have to when you fly a lot. And we had some crazy thunderstorms
oof.
on the East Coast. And I'm like, oh, Christmas. So we get there. I'll never forget. It almost seemed like the flight attendants were not even friendly. They're like, here's what you're going to do. You're getting to your seat. Here's your snack. Here's your water. Nobody pees. It's a 45-minute flight. Sit down, buckle in, and don't say a word. I looked at Jen and went, oh, good Lord. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that was like, it was so insane that I could not stop laughing the whole time. It was 45 minutes of literally the worst turbulence you could ever imagine. I mean, things were everywhere. You couldn't even drink your water, like couldn't get it in your mouth. And
Right.
we just tried to watch Netflix, and Jay, who has no problem flying, got off that flight and said, is it cool if we go get a drink? And I still have a drink with you after that one. But you know what? Looking back on that, I also know that if they wouldn't fly in that if it wasn't safe. As not safe as we felt
Right.
about it,
Right.
clearly there had to be some safety with it, and they wouldn't have continued to fly. They're just not going to do that. And I have a friend of mine, I think I've said it before, who is he hosts our training, nice guy. I've had conversations with him. He was a commercial airline pilot, and he tells me about things, and it makes me feel a lot more comfortable. So I'm just like, whatever, man. Like, we've had, listen, I've flown a couple hundred times since I've been traveling the country and training police officers. And I just say this thing in my head. I'm like, Lord, please, if you want me to do the work, if you want these people to get the training they need to, bring the crime to, bring the devil to justice. And you want these folks who are so humble that they go out and for merely minuscule salaries, put their lives on the line and protect and near people. And you need me to train them, spare me. I will do your work. Just friggin' spare me, Lord. And I don't say that much
Partner with
anymore.
you. Yeah, no,
But
but
it
so
is what it
for
is.
some people, having that experience would have been enough to scare the shit out of them and never come back to flying. Or you could look at that experience and you can say, I have experienced, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the shittiest and scariest, that was like a 9.5 for me. So if I
Mhm.
tolerated that and I came out okay, that proves to me that the likelihood of that happening again and me coming out and being okay is pretty probable, pretty high. But so again, like it really depends on the person. So for you, that was a good experience. It got you closer to your worst case scenario, which it was like, because half the time in our minds, we create this worst case scenario and our brains just fill with fear. When when the amygdala is turned on and the prefrontal cortex is turned off, that's what happens. So it's called flipping your lid. I love doing this one. Greg, if you're listening, you can make a video of this. Silly. So I love doing this one. So this is your brain, right? You've got like your brain stem down here, and this is like where you're
She's holding up you're seeing this video. You have to explain it for the audio listeners. She's holding up a fist with her thumb tucked in.
Right. Okay. So the bottom of your fist is your brain stem, which has to do with respiration, heartbeat, like everything that functions that keeps you alive inside of your body, blood flow, all that kind of good stuff. Right. So up in the front where your knuckles are, the front of your knuckles, like by your nails, essentially, is your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex is the thinking part of your brain, your ability to make decisions, your ability to rationalize, your ability to contemplate and perceive certain things. Underneath, when I lift my fingers underneath, I got my thumb tucked in. My thumb represents your amygdala. Your amygdala is the part of your brain that has everything to do with emotion, fear, all those sorts of things. And your amygdala houses a lot of your traumatic events, which I'll come back to in a minute. So when it turns on, your prefrontal cortex, which, like I said, that front part where your nails are, turns off. Your amygdala takes over, and you're only operating on that primitive part of your brain that's saying fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system that we were just talking about. So did you ever hear the term flipping your lid or amygdala hijack? That's literally where it comes from, because you'll see pictures of people with their flipping their lid, like they're old school. When we first learned about this, the top half of their brain is like being cut off, like, and that's where the pictures came from. It came right from here, flipping your lid. So the prefrontal cortex turns off. We're not able to rationalize and turn and think about things in a logical way. We're thinking about only the emotion that we're feeling underneath it all. So if we can quiet the amygdala, and if we can do some of these coping skills that we were talking about to quiet the amygdala, get the amygdala under control, if we hush it, then we can turn the prefrontal cortex back on, make better decisions, and be able to say, hey, is this fear rational or is this fear irrational?
It's funny. Have you seen, I actually,
He laughs at me.
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
I sent you the Seth Godin linchpin, right? It's titled typically "How Not to Get Fired." It's one of those ones I gave you, the Seth Godin thing to watch. It's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you watch that yet?
Not yet. It's on my list. I have a list. I have a running list.
Come on, man. You got to be accounting for your day and your time. If you're sitting around watching some Netflix series, some
Right
OTT
there.
shit.
No, it's right there. See it on my list?
Okay.
It's
You
number
got to get
one.
to that. But in there, he talks about the amygdala and the lizard brain, he calls it.
Yes.
Because when you understand what the lizard brain is, you can start making better decisions.
100.
Have you seen the movie? I know you have kids. We have kids with the same names, which is oddly enough. Did you see the movie Luca yet?
Yes.
How about this one? Silencio Bruno.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So all he's talking about is the amygdala, right? So he's teaching Luca to calm himself down and understand what his fight or flight is. And when he notices it, he yells at it. Silencio, they called it Bruno. Silencio Bruno. So we do that. We're at the festival or a fair the other night. So today's Friday. That was a Wednesday. And my oldest son run that the slide with the sacks. We're at the top, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm scared." I'm like, "Hey, Silencio Bruno," and they kept yelling it to each other, "Silencio Bruno." So put your fear to the side. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm fearful of a lot of things. I've got some very high anxiety about one issue. I'm not going to discuss that. It's kind of silly, but it is what it is. It comes from it's really manifested for years. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it. Right. That's part of my thing. I'm gonna fix it. But often at times I'm so good at recognizing fear and what it is that I laugh at it. And actually it actually is a comforting feeling to me to know that I'm doing something I should be doing and I'm heading in the right direction. So I use fear as a North Star. So I actually have used my amygdala, my fight or flight that's built in over a million years of human programming, the fight or flight or freeze, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. For your
And I
benefit.
go, oh, if I'm scared of that, it must be really good for me to do.
Mm,
That's what I do.
yeah.
I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
That's if I'm scared of it, Courtney said to me one time a couple of years ago when we started, creating the conference. She said, "What do you know about creating a conference? What do you know about running a conference?" I said, "What have I known about doing anything?"
I
And she
learned.
went, "That's a good point. You're absolutely right. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. All I knew is that I'm just going to figure it out." We had a conversation with Matt yesterday. I said sometime or somebody else. I was on the phone with somebody talking about training. I said, often as police officers, we are forced to jump and grow your wings on the way down.
Yeah.
That's really the whole thing behind becoming a cop is to jump and grow your wings on the way down. The problem with our thing is, as you're growing your wings, somebody might be able to pick you off as easy prey, and because of the inherent danger of this job, you've got to kind of spend some time in the field training before you get into the big game. You've got to go out and practice, and that includes mental health, understanding what it is as well. That's part of it, and there'll be a lot more of a conversation regarding this nationally, I think, on a lot of levels as we progress. I think before you and I meet the Grim Reaper, say hello to St. Peter, I think you're going to see a lot of progression and change. I actually just spoke to somebody the other day who said, we have somebody who works at our agency who is assigned to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't seem too fond about it. So that may be an answer. That could be one of those knee-jerk, short-term fix political plays. What we have to make sure is when we implement something that's actually effective.
Yeah.
That's a
Then it makes
big portion
sense.
of it. And it's just everything. Like you have police academies, you're checking boxes. Well, one police academy might have a great mixed martial arts program or defensive tactics program. The other
Mm-hmm.
one might be terrible. I went to 3 of them, and
Mm-hmm.
all 3 of them were not taught exactly the same way. They were just very different instructors on that alone. To be honest with you, I think none of them worked. I think it was just checking the boxes, and we just can't do that with mental health.
No, not at all.
Okay, so that's me, Seth
Yeah.
Godin.
No,
You should
definitely.
watch that portion. Everybody talks about
Well,
when you know what the lizard brain is. That's your lizard brain telling you what to do, and the
yeah.
Silencio Bruno, right? It's a really
Right.
good short clip to
Well,
watch.
and I also wanted to say too, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the first podcast that we did, triggers. We talked about, okay, so stress, depending on the level of stress that you experience, a stressful incident, stress tends to move from our explicit memory into our implicit memory. So that explicit memory is intentional, it's conscious. I can recall it. I can tell you exactly what happened. Let's say a dog bit me. I can tell it wasn't too traumatic for me, maybe hypothetically. I can tell you exactly what happened to make the dog bite me. I was standing next to the dog and I was petting his head and he was fine. But then as soon as I touched his belly, he snapped at me. I jumped backwards and he jumped on top of me, right? So I can give you the 1, 2, 3 step by step of that. Then we have your implicit memory. Your implicit memory is your procedural memory. It's that muscle memory. For some people, like how you can access this is by doing something habitually over and over, brushing your teeth, riding a bike. You're not consciously thinking about doing those things. That's part of your implicit memory. So this is where a lot of stressful events are stored. So let's say that dog bit me and I was really, really traumatized by it. I wouldn't have that necessarily, that explicit memory of it. That's why report writing for a lot of these issues is an issue, especially if you can't use your body cam, which is a different thing, but I'll get into it at a later date. So if you're experiencing a critical incident and literally your memory system is being entangled due to the fight or flight that's being turned on, and it's stored in your procedural memory, which part of your procedural memory is your emotional memory. Your amygdala literally plays a role. And I said I was going to come back to this when we were flipping the lid. Now I'm back to it. So your amygdala has a lot to do with your emotions, like we talked about. It also has a lot to do with your memory. And That's why a lot of negative emotions, positive emotions, invoking emotion has a lot to do with learning, because a stressful event is essentially a learning event for your body. It's your body being able to say, I need to use this experience and efficiently work with it in the future. Therefore, some of that unconscious procedural memory, part of that, when the amygdala is involved, has a lot to do with what we call triggers. So because it's unconscious, sometimes you may have one of those five senses evoke some of that emotion in you, and you may not even know why you're being triggered. Maybe and I think that we talked about this, for some people, it could be a DV victim smelling the cologne of her abuser or his abuser. Could be either or. I don't want to gender specific an event like that. But so it could be smelling the cologne, the detergent, the perfume, and that could have a negative impact. Sometimes that could have a positive impact, right? Like sometimes you remember a smell and you're like, oh man, like that I have a good experience associated with that. Sometimes you have a negative, but we sometimes unconsciously don't really realize where that's coming from. You could hear a sound, and a sound may naturally evoke a emotion, and that's essentially what a trigger is for all of us. Part of therapy, part of self-help is taking that unconscious piece and bringing it to the conscious, because if we can connect those dots, we can prepare for that trigger, or we can combat that trigger. Hey, I know what this is right now. I know what's related to it. And that's also what you were describing too when you were talking about your meditation. When you were getting into some of your meditation, maybe it was bodily places that you were going, or cognitive places that you were going in your mind. It could be a bodily sensation that you were feeling that made you remember a childhood experience. It could be a cognitive thought that you had that you attach to that experience. Now you had that thought in a different area of your life or domain of your life, but you're going to react similarly because your brain has already associated with the original event, if that makes sense. I'm getting a little bit complicated now, right? Because our brain works in associations, again, because it's lazy. And like, so like I said, the first time that we had the podcast, think of it like a food store, and your body is, you experience a event where, like I said, like a dog is biting me and I felt physically unsafe. My brain is going to take that and it's going to store it, I don't know, in the bean section of my brain, where all of my negative memories are, and everything that I have negatively is being associated in the bean section, not the pasta section, because that's always positive, right? Positive experiences go for carbs. But seriously, so your brain is going to take that and it's going to work in associations. How many times have you met somebody and you're like, I just don't like them. I can't put my finger on it, because our brain works in associations.
How about, like, aren't we employing the same thing for when we are choosing partners?
Absolutely.
Or you're doing. You ever see the theories about they can tell who is going to win an election when elections aren't tampered with? Who's going to win an election based on what they look like compared to the other candidate?
Yeah.
Because people are making assessments of it, and that's why.
Right.
And by the way, I'm sure you agree with this, because 98% of society is completely stupid. Like, this whole, like, 90% of the world is made up of complete morons. Like, clear as day. Just like literally people just floating around, existing, and having the ability to do something that contributes, but overall, almost, and I hate to say this, but almost kind of useless. That's why the 2% kind of try to find themselves, and whatever, maybe even 5% or 10%. But overall, people are really, really not smart. I guess we're using the same thing to say, oh, and there's a lot of science behind that. I've seen, I don't know, I'm into weird stuff. Like, I don't mean weird stuff like that. I'm saying when I watch anything on television, if I have any time to myself, it has to be on history or something scientific.
Yeah.
That's just who I am. So I saw that they're talking about, you're making an assessment on somebody based on, do you believe that you can mate with this person? And that's somewhere in your brain. You're doing that assessment
Primitively.
right away.
Yeah,
primitive
primitively.
assessments.
Because that's like, before we were as sophisticated as we were cavemen, and we functioned based upon safety, fight or flight. That's where it came from, and reproduction. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really like essentially like what our purpose was.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, so as we became more social beings, a lot of that primitive nature came with us, which has a lot to do with we're constantly in a state of safe or unsafe, being mobilized or being immobilized, feeling that somebody's a threat or something is not a threat. And that could be a person, that could be a situation, everything. Like if you walked up to me um, and I was like, my arms are crossed and my eyebrows are scrunched and I'm like looking at you like with a mean mug, your natural reaction is going to be, this is not going to be good. Oh, fuck.
Mhm.
Or this doesn't feel safe. She might be doing something. She might be up to something. Whereas if my arms are down at my side, my eyebrows are up, I'm smiling at you, you might be thinking, what the fuck is she up to? Or you might be thinking like, okay, this feels a little bit safer. Dogs do this. Animals of all kinds do this. And it's programmed in our brains because we're animals as well.
Mhm.
So we're meant to read body language, to read facial expressions, to read changes in voice, tone, pitch, volume. Those things are insanely important when we talk about emotional intelligence, when we talk about reading behavior and body language,
How
and
about
especially in this
recognizing
profession.
how do you recognize that in yourself? Can you do a self-assessment of what am I feeling right now and try to
Yeah,
recognize what it is and redirect that and change it?
absolutely. And a lot of that, like we talked about with the Johari window in the previous podcast, a lot of that is getting feedback from other people. Hey, did you know that every time I ask you this question, you squint or you look away from me or you stop and you disengage in this conversation? Oh, damn, I didn't realize that. Something's triggering me about that. And moving the unconscious to the conscious, that is the key to self growth. But there are a lot of things that get in the way: defensiveness, not being open to it, not wanting to know because that criticism feels a little bit too uncomfortable for us. Um, Being so involved and absorbed in our own emotions that maybe we don't really care. We just care about getting that emotion out. We don't really care about how people are perceiving it. So yeah,
So
there's a lot of different
yeah.
dynamics.
Truth be told, I mean, this may sound crazy, but I really pride myself on my EQ. That's really one of the best things. I was on the phone with Caitlin yesterday, and we're talking, and she said, "You really should do a class on how to teach bosses how to be bosses." She goes,
Yeah.
"Because I said, Caitlin, there's gonna be more bosses like me as history progresses, because what's gonna happen is you're not gonna be able to retain people without treating them appropriately." She goes, when people ask me about my job, I just go, it's just the best. And that's what I want. I'm constantly trying to get feedback, not because I'm self-conscious about it. I need feedback to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I said,
Mhm.
you reported something. I recognize that, I asked you something, your body language told me differently. I dug into it. I realized there was a problem. It was addressed, and now you're happy again. So that's what my job is to do. Well, one
Yeah.
thing that's very interesting for me is I can recognize the state of emotion that I'm in, because it's very rare that I leave zen and peacefulness. It's very true.
Yeah.
But my
No.
kids will.
Absolutely.
I'll have moments. Last night, for example, where I got a deep tissue massage before I went home, just because I want to get the health benefits out of it. That's what I'm trying to do. It's not because I need it. I'm like, I actually don't even want to go. It's not like I'm going to go relax and like put fucking cucumbers on my eyes and have a
Well, it
glass of wine
hurts.
and talk to Cheryl. I mean, I was getting the shit beat out of me. Yeah, for 60 to 70 minutes last night. I'm sore as hell today. I went home. I could almost not walk. And, I wanted to get in bed by like 9:15. My kids are going friggin' nuts. And I said to myself, okay, you're irritable.
Mhm.
Everything that you say and do, no matter how you feel, it's not their fault. So do not, like, just take us. And, at one point I was actually slept. One kid kicked another kid in the hand. Now he's doing that real cry where he's really hurt,
Right.
not just a bullshit cry. And I'm like, I said to my second, I go, get in the bed. And he started crying. Then I had to apologize because he woke me up. And it's where I went. I'm like, I'm sorry. Daddy didn't mean it, buddy. I wasn't like, I'm not a lunatic person. Like, I just don't have a personality where I don't get hot. I'm not an emotional person. But I was so tired. I was so beat up. Long day, right? I had a long morning. We had a lot of stuff going on.
Mhm.
And, but I'll often recognize it. Okay, listen, dude, you're in a spot right now where I'll try to step out of my own mind and take a look at it. Like, what is going on with you right now, Den?
Absolutely. Well,
So
and constantly like checking in with yourself and knowing where, like, not to be corny, but like your stress meter's at. Like if you know you're at a 7, like you have to do something you got to implement something cognitively, physically, whatever that may be, to get you down to a 5, because you're not going to deal with stress the same way at a 7 that you would at a 3. It's like a cup. If I take this cup and all day long, like, you piss me off, I'm going to pour a little bit of water in there. My dog pisses all over the floor, I'm going to pour a little bit more water in there. I ran out of hot water and I had to take a cold shower, I'm going to pour a little bit more hot water in there. Like eventually this cup is going to, I'm going to pour water in, it's going to splash and it's going to go all over the place. And it might not be that last cup that I pour in, that last bit of water that goes in, it might not even be that big of a deal, but I overflowed. I don't have any more space to withhold any more water in my cup. It had to come out. It was inevitable. So it might not even be that last thing. That last thing might not have even been that big. It was just like, my ability to hold on to and bear any more stress. I've seen the most that I can see for that day. And being able to know when your cup reaches its halfway point so that you could take some of that water out so that you can withstand a little bit more water.
it's interesting that you bring that up because that's part of the 5 a.m. Club book by Raman Sharma is,
Yeah, really?
it's coming back to meditation when you're starting to feel that burnout and stress, is to stop, go do your meditation routine and come back with fresh set. I mean, you're essentially recharging your batteries.
Yeah.
You're starting the day like, and we're going to have to finish in the next few minutes because we'll have to do a part 2 on stress. I know we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
It's just, this is kind of an impromptu one. I wanted to get it in before I have a big trip next week.
Mhm.
Your day starts out with your battery being charged. Now, if you're coming up midnight, you got 4 hours of sleep, you're starting your day at 35, 40%. That's not good. People have said to me, I'm out of the job now 6 years. So people have seen me, they go, you look younger. You look healthier 6 years later. You look younger than when you were here.
Yeah.
Because I'm routine. I'm disciplined. I don't drink anymore. A lot of things like drinking fucks my sleep up so bad. It's another big reason why I don't touch the booze. I am not somebody who sleeps well with alcohol. It fucks everything up for me. And I just like to stay away from it. And again, if you like to drink, I'm not critical of you. This is, for me, it's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. I agree.
Charging battery. What was I saying? So I'm at the charging battery thing. I lost my thought. This is what happens when you have a brain.
You were
like
talking
mine.
about 30-40%. You're coming off midnights. It's a little bit difficult. You don't have much to give. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Check this out. So
I'm going to keep going with this analogy.
Yeah. Emily Fletcher, when we took her book, she said, you've got to make time in the morning to meditate. You've got to get up 30 minutes earlier. I don't care if it hurts at 30 minutes. You got to get up, and here's why. Meditation is going to feel like 2 to 3 hours of sleep. It's the same thing from getting hypnotized. And when you get hypnotized, it'll feel like you've slept for 2 or 3 hours when you come out of it. So even if you're waking up and losing 30 on your normal sleep, you're going to gain back 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours on the meditation practice. So if you're feeling tired, I drink coffee because I like the way coffee tastes, and it's part of my routine, and I drink it black, and I don't think the intrinsic health issues are there. I don't milk it down and sugar it up. I just enjoy the taste. Matter of fact, I drink a cup of decaf in the afternoon, just kind of like the flavor of coffee after my what I eat for lunch. That's all I do, right? There was a woman in the class in the Ziva meditation thing that said she was drinking 3 cups of Starbucks a day and doesn't have, so you got a $20 a day Starbucks habit. Yeah. And Starbucks is like drinking fucking test fuel. I mean, it is literally, I don't fuck with it. I like Dunkin' Donuts. It's just me. Right. And she said she no longer needed to drink any coffee at all.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about that, people want to download the app, the one where it's, the one with the little orange thing. Okay. Find what works for you. I'm not criticizing other people's meditation routines, but for the police officers listening, Ziva meditation is a great place to go. And if you want to toy around with it, I put 3 people on it here in this fucking office 2 weeks ago. You won't need to,
I have no Zen in me, but I'm going to check it out. We have passive release coping skills, which are the meditation, the relaxation, and like I said, underneath those, the progressive muscle relaxation where you're tensing up and then loosening, guided imagery where you're closing your eyes. It could be scripted or thought of in your head. You could be listening to someone taking you to your happy place, but using all five senses, like you're breathing it in, you're smelling it. If it's the beach, I'm smelling the salt. I'm feeling the sun like burning on my face. The sand is in between my toes, right? Like you're there, and that's guided imagery. Then you have deep breathing that you could do, which again, all these things activate the parasympathetic nervous system when you're in fight or flight to kind of bring you, it's
Oh,
literally
yeah.
telling your body, it's tricking your body and saying, the threat is gone, calm back down. Like blood flow gets to slow back down. You got to breathe in real deep, breathe out. It's getting the carbon dioxide out of your body, oxygenizing. I'm making up words now. It's getting oxygen into your back into your bloodstream, getting things moving. Then you also have active release coping skills, which are movement based. And we could also talk more about that. But guess what, Den? I got to go get myself a haircut.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Let's talk about two quick things.
Go.
Exercising, right? I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you so. I'm just going to compare myself to this. I'm so mentally correct when I get my workout routine in the morning for the rest of the day that I can't even
Yeah.
afford to fucking miss exercising.
Oh, yeah.
That's how much it does for me. I mean,
It
literally,
literally releases endorphins in your brain.
yeah,
Literally.
I'm so, and by the way, I also listen to business podcasts and business books while I meditate. Well, I'm sorry, while I'm working out. So, and then what I actually do is I go into a very hot shower and then I go into an extremely cold shower. At the end, I usually do 2 minutes of ice cold. Where I live, we're on well water. So my water is basically 50 degrees year round. And
Nice.
I literally sit in there and I turn off my inner bitch and I go, now it's just routine. As a matter of fact, sometimes I'm at the office, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to put the cold water on this morning. I know not only is it good for you and your personal, your organs and things like that, but I think mentally it really just ripens me for the day. And it's that shocking cup of coffee. There's a lot of theories behind how to feel the feeling of lethargicness throughout the day. I don't know if that's the right word, but and there's been a lot of research on go take an ice cold shower.
Yeah.
That'll wake you to fuck up.
That's your nervous system.
All right, cool. So I just want to put that stuff out there before we finish. We'll
Yeah.
call this stress part 1.
Yeah.
Let's not even and we'll do stress part 2, and we'll see if there's gonna be a 3. We'll see where we get to in the next episode.
Ask us questions too. Some people are asking some cool questions, which I think we've covered some of them.
Okay, so have your list of questions for the next one. I am not a clinical therapist, but I'm glad to have you here as one and a resource to law enforcement. We're doing the best that we can to try to deliver what we can. I always have this thought. I think about the people who are critical of the work that we're doing. And the question I have for you is, would you rather us not do anything? You know what I mean? What are you doing to contribute to helping things? But I also want to tell you that I don't listen to the noise at all. I just think it's comical that the people who say anything about what we're trying to do will never say it to our faces. They hide in the shallows, and they do not confront because the truth hurts the feelings. They live in a lot of insecurity, and we're trying to get you to come and understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you to our side.
Yeah.
We're for you too. You don't have to hate us. Come join us. We're on the right mission.
I am listening because I'm analyzing.
Me?
No, like I'm listening to some of the voices. Like when I put up certain posts.
Okay, so some feedback, Jen, some feedback is important, but not all feedback's important. You know what I mean?
Not all feedback, but it helps me to know where everyone's at.
Sure.
It does.
Hey, every class that we do, SurveyMonkey fires you out a 10-question questionnaire. We look at them, right? If we see something, oh shit, I didn't realize it, right? You can feel and read the room when you're an instructor. We're trying to give you the best experience possible. So you can't listen to all criticism, but some of it's important. You got to know how to discern between the two.
Yeah.
Right. You got to know if something is coming from a place of hatred or something that's coming from a place of concern.
Right.
I used to play videos in my class that were, they were outrageously vulgar and brutal, and they were funny.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, like the fucking teapot calling the kettle. You know what I mean? So
I have not cursed once.
Yeah, well, I have. And by the way, we also have this thing being recorded before we started, and we can play that shit at the end here.
I don't think I cursed.
Get the fuck out of here! You didn't curse. Please, you wake up, curse, and you go to bed. You're just so goddamn Jersey. It's the best. I'm married to so goddamn Jersey. Foul mouth on that one too. It's just comforting for us, right? That's like foul language is a trigger for us to trust somebody.
Yeah.
Can we trust people? You trust people when they curse here.
Well, that's what Kenny said.
What do you say?
Kenny was like, if you're not cursing, I'm not trusting you.
It's the truth, man. I don't trust people who don't curse.
Yeah.
Anyway, so without further ado, we're going to stop it here. Jen,
Yeah, I gotta go get my hair cut.
All right, man. Get your hair did.
All right.
Check out streetcop.com. Check out our Facebook group, Private for Police Officers. The Street Cop Conference, October 4th through the 8th, 2021, Atlantic City. We're up over 800 in attendance now. We have some huge things going on. It's going to be a great week of law enforcement training. Check out streetcop.com for all offered courses and upcoming courses. And you could always email streetcoptraining@gmail.com or Jenna Rose at streetcop.com. Yep. And we'll try to continue to put this stuff together for everybody to have resources.
And also, if you want a summary of some of the stuff that I was talking about, I have an article that I wrote. Subscribe to my email. It's my email subscription, completely free. No marketing bullshit. Oh, see, I cursed. You motherfucker, you brought it out of me.
There it is.
So it's completely
I didn't bring it out of you. You were trying to hold it back. You're just being yourself
completely
again.
Free, no marketing bullshit. It's just weekly tips, honestly and truly. Just trying to reach people and give you guys some support. Sign up.
All right, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to our channel or leave a comment below, and also like us too. It means the world to us.